Don't drink too much, and be careful. We've all heard something along these lines or said them to people who are about to go out. We all know that we should drink responsibly and make sure we and our friends make it home safely at the end of the night. And there are endless campaigns and advertisements encouraging us to use our best judgment when it comes to alcohol. But we cannot control the actions of others, and sometimes a joyful night of drinking can turn into an earth-shattering nightmare for innocent bystanders. Today, we will take a look at a case in which a woman's life was cruelly, brutally snatched away by a violent, inebriated teenager. A case made all the more heartbreaking by the fact that she was killed just 100 meters from her workplace, receiving no help from the people who heard her screams. This is the tragic death of Joan Ryder. On the night of May 21st, 2013, residents of Leichhardt Street in Logan Central, Queensland, Australia, heard a scream, a woman's scream, cutting through the night. It didn't only occur once, but several times. The scream clearly came from someone who was terrified, seemingly making an unarticulated plea for whoever heard it to come and help. Neighbors Stephen and Aurora Hodby later told police they heard the screaming between 7 and 7:30 p.m. But upon going outside, they found nothing. They tried looking around the area, but at the moment, the scream stopped. Multiple people were puzzled about what was happening that night, but no one bothered to heavily investigate. The question of what had happened was answered early the next day when one resident made a grisly discovery on a neighbor's lawn. They found a woman's body, half naked and covered with blood. She was lying face down, partially clothed, in the front yard of 30 Leichhardt Street. What her neighbor and also her killer likely didn't know is that she was also 8 weeks pregnant, awaiting a birth that would never happen. Joan Ryder was born and raised in the Philippines, the youngest of 8 siblings. She never had the chance to meet her father as he was murdered before she took her first breath. Despite these difficult circumstances and the fact that she was raised in poverty, Joan was still determined to build a better life. She became the only one of her siblings to complete her education, a remarkable achievement that filled her family with pride. Her brother stepped up to become the family breadwinner after their father's death, and Joan was determined to repay him for the sacrifices he made. As such, she promised to find a way to put her nephews through school. In 2009, Joan moved to Australia to pursue further education and her passion for hairdressing. And she was determined. She studied at school for 8 hours and then headed to work for another 8 hours at a nearby McDonald's. Even with such a demanding schedule, she maintained her positive attitude, gaining the respect of colleagues and friends alike. And things were just going to get better. In February 2011, at a coffee shop around Stone's Corner, a Canadian-born chef named Joan Ryder took an interest in Joan. The two began a whirlwind romance, tying the knot in October that same year. Their marriage was full of love, but what the two really wanted was to start a family. By 2013, Joan was pregnant with her first daughter, and every day felt like a dream come true. Days after learning the news, the couple still couldn't stop looking at the ultrasound picture of the little girl they were expecting. Joan had even chosen a name, Camille Gail Ryder. Joan wanted to keep working at the McDonald's, which was just 1 kilometer from her Mays Avenue home. It was a walkable distance, and Joan was happy to make the trip, but Corey insisted on accompanying her to and from work, just to make sure she was safe. However, both Joan and Corey working in shifts, their schedules didn't always line up. In such cases, Joan would walk to work, and Corey would pick her up afterwards. Corey still worried about Joan making the trip to work alone, but Joan reassured him that she wasn't alone. She was always with her baby Camille. Joan's coworkers were incredibly supportive. Even though she was still in the early stages of her pregnancy, her peers tried to make sure she wasn't under too much pressure. They also worked to cheer her up if a customer brought her down. With a good husband, a great circle of friends, a supportive workplace, and a cute baby girl on the way, Joan was surrounded by love. She couldn't believe that the life she dreamed of was finally coming together, and Corey was just as happy. But unfortunately, their time together was about to be cut short. On the night of May 21st, 2013, a group of teenagers walked down the dark streets near the McDonald's where Joan worked. Their cheeks were flushed and they reeked of alcohol, and even from far away, it was easy to tell they were drunk. The boys laughed and joked with one another as they stumbled their way towards Leichhardt Street, Logan Central, to steal a car. They were caught on CCTV at 8:27 p.m. on nearby Wembley Road, and among them was 17-year-old Andrew Michael Burke. Burke had dropped out of school in year 9, had a history of petty theft, and was still on parole. Unsurprisingly, these teens were not making the best decisions. The boys had been drinking during the day, not enough to get them fully wasted, but enough to cloud their judgment. They'd equipped themselves with tools to help them steal a car. Andrew had stolen a packet of screwdrivers for the job. They almost succeeded with their mission, but suddenly they were disturbed by someone who noticed what they were doing. The boys immediately scattered, taking off in different directions. According to trial testimony, witnesses last saw Burke running in the direction of the McDonald's. If he'd headed in any other direction, the night may have ended differently. But he was on course to run into his unsuspecting victim, a woman walking alone at night, headed to start her 9 p.m. shift at work. Andrew ran toward Joan and began attacking her, dragging her onto a nearby lawn. She struggled as hard as she could, screaming and trying to resist Andrew as he continued his assault. He stabbed her with one of the screwdrivers he had stolen and brutally raped her, even using the screwdriver to sexually assault her. A forensic pathologist later told the court the most chilling detail. Joan was still alive when she was stabbed in the genitals 4 or more times with an object, suspected to be the head and handle of a screwdriver. The assault was so violent that it even affected her unborn child. Refusing to give up, Joan kept screaming. Burke kicked her in the head, trying to get her to stop, before he finally choked her to death. Many wondered how Joan's screams weren't heard by anyone in such a dense residential area. Well, the fact is that they did hear her. Some residents heard a woman's voice that night, sometime between 7 and 7:30 p.m. One went outside to see what happened, but he saw nothing but darkness, with no one in sight. Other residents also went outside when they heard her screams, but no one saw anything. Joan's death was estimated to have occurred between 8:30 and 9 p.m. After Andrew was finished with Joan, he left her body out in the open, barely clothed, with blood pooling on the lawn. She was just 100 meters from McDonald's, where she was supposed to start her shift. At around the same time, Corey finished his shift and went to his car, humming his favorite song. He drove for a while, accompanied by the sound of late-night radio as he headed to pick his wife up from work. That night, Joan had told him he didn't need to worry about picking her up, but he insisted, saying it was best for her. After all, he was just concerned about the safety of his wife and their unborn daughter. It was too dangerous for her to walk home alone. He went inside the McDonald's, greeting Joan's coworkers, but instead of the response he expected, they told him something that made his mind go blank. Joan didn't come in today. She had never arrived for her shift. Unusual for someone normally so reliable. Corey reported Joan missing at around midnight. He drove along the route she usually took to and from work, his eyes darting around for any sign of his beloved wife. But he saw nothing. He searched all night. It was not until around 7 a.m. the next day that a resident saw something strange on a neighbor's lawn. Robert Mills, 40, who lived in Leichhardt Street, said he was walking to the shop when he saw something he thought was a mannequin or a doll in a yard. He screamed for help upon noticing the mannequin was covered in blood. He knocked on the yard owner's door and screamed for help. Together, they took in the horrifying scene. A half-naked woman was lying face down, not moving, with blood pooling around her. At first, Robert couldn't recognize her face. He could barely see it. He immediately called the police, and an investigation was launched. It was only later, during the autopsy, that investigators discovered the victim had been 8 weeks pregnant. Police informed Corey at 7 a.m. that they had found a body. He would later say he was probably the last person to discover what happened. Upon hearing the devastating news, Corey couldn't contain his grief. He was so devastated that he felt like his heart had just stopped. The police went to his home, trying to gather as much information as possible. There, they saw the house shared by a loving couple that had met such a terrible fate. One small consolation is that there was plenty of DNA evidence on the front and back of her clothing that could point them to a suspect. Through careful examination, they were able to get a name from the DNA on Joan's green jumper. The DNA was 100 billion times more likely to have come from Andrew Michael Burke than from anyone else. But that's not all. Joan's DNA was found on Andrew Burke's shoes, and the stippling marks on Joan's face matched the pattern on the soles. It was evidence that he had stomped on her face. He was arrested just 10 days after Joan's body was found, on June 1st, 2013, which happened to be his 18th birthday. He was charged with her rape and murder. Andrew made his first court appearance on June 3rd and has remained in custody ever since. Even though they had DNA evidence, the police didn't stop investigating. They questioned several people, including Andrew's then-girlfriend, Belinda Bessie Bon-Clevens, who claimed to have seen him the day after the murder, wearing bandages on his swollen hands. The bandages had blood on them, but when asked about the blood, Andrew claimed it was the blood of someone he had gotten into a fight with at a bar. The bandages were later found in his girlfriend's bin. When forensic experts examined them, the blood was found to belong to none other than Joan. What made the case even more chilling was Andrew's demeanor after the crime. According to his girlfriend's sister, he seemed totally fine. He was himself. On the night of the murder, after committing the brutal attack, Andrew reportedly went to his girlfriend's house and watched a movie as if nothing had happened. It was revealed in court that Andrew had just been released from a detention facility and was on parole at the time of the murder. What surprised the police was that in the 10 days between the murder and his arrest, Andrew made no attempt to flee. He remained out in public even when he knew he was the suspect. Andrew tried to deny the allegations at first. During his interrogation, he claimed the clothes he was wearing during the interview were the ones he was wearing on the night of the murder, which initially led the police to collect DNA from the wrong clothing. He denied being in the area at all, but later, in subsequent interviews, he admitted to attempting to steal a car on the street where the lady was murdered. Eventually, he described his rape of Joan in graphic detail. An autopsy report stated Joan had died from suffocation caused by stomping and choking, with her death occurring between 8:30 and 9 p.m. Because neighbors had heard screaming around 7 to 7:30 p.m., Andrew's defense barrister, Frank Martin, argued that the murder was unlikely to have been committed by his client. He claimed that if Joan had been killed between 8:30 and 9 p.m., Andrew could not have caused her death, referencing Andrew's appearance on CCTV footage of Wembley Road at 8:27 p.m. and phone calls that he had made around that time. Frank Martin also argued that it was strange that the murder occurred in a residential area, yet no one reported seeing the murder, even though so many had heard a woman screaming. Crown Prosecutor Glenn Cash presented the case against Andrew, calling 62 witnesses to testify before Justice Deborah Mullins. The court battle was long, but finally, Andrew was sentenced to life imprisonment by Justice Mullins, with a minimum non-parole period of 20 years. He also received 14 years for rape and 5 years for killing the unborn child, to be served concurrently. Andrew was 21 years old at the time of sentencing. He told the court he had been diagnosed with depression and PTSD since the murder. The trial itself wasn't an easy process for Corey, who was 43 years old at the time. He had to face the person who took his whole family away from him. Yet, in front of the media, he still tried to remain calm, saying the suspect was innocent until proven guilty. He believed that, although slow, he had faith in the Australian justice system. In one of the early hearings, he said he wanted to see the face of the person who took his world from him. He tried to remain calm, but his hands trembled. He rubbed his fingers against the wedding ring that he still wore. He even brought the ultrasound photograph of his unborn daughter to the court. While crying, he said he just wanted justice for his wife. Instead, he had to endure hours of hearing gruesome details about how his wife was assaulted, raped, kicked, stabbed, and eventually left face down on the lawn to die. At the court, Andrew's family was also present, struggling to handle their guilt after hearing the horrifying details of his actions. In a hearing held 3 years after the murder, Corey told the media that even until that day, he always thought of his wife whenever he passed the road she took to go to and from work. For years, he had the same recurring dream, sitting in a grassy meadow with blue sky above him. In front of him was a cute little girl with pigtails who called him Dad. But no matter how hard he tried to embrace her, the girl seemed impossible to catch. He believed that the girl was Camille, visiting her heartbroken father in his dreams. In his victim impact statement, Corey articulated his devastation, saying, "I have learned how to hate." He continued, "Life for me now is empty and hollow. I feel like there's nothing left to really live for." He wanted Andrew to know that he was broken. The case finally came to an end, but it didn't end the pain felt in the community. The residents felt huge regret for not trying hard enough to search for the source of the woman's scream. Corey regretted not taking his wife to work. He regretted letting her continue to work the night shift. Joan's funeral was held in Brisbane on a Friday or Saturday before June 9th. The city that had seen the two united by love was the same location. They saw them separated by pain. Joan's body was flown to the Philippines for burial in her hometown of Baroy in the Lanao del Norte province. The cost of transporting Joan from Brisbane to Manila alone was $10,000 to $11,000, including paperwork. With the help of donations, a total of $16,000 was raised, covering the transportation and also helping to renovate Joan's mother's home in the Philippines. Finally, Joan was laid to rest in her hometown. Meanwhile, Corey has tried to move on, not from the memory of Joan, but the pain he suffered from losing her and the daughter they never had a chance to welcome into the world. Andrew is still behind bars without even any hope of seeing the outside world for another 20 years. Sometimes fate is cruel. The direction chosen by Andrew that night was enough to put Joan in harm's way. We may never truly understand the actions of people who make such horrible, irrevocable decisions. Those who snatch the lives of innocent people when they're doing something as simple as walking to work. But we can do our best to ensure justice is served, to support surviving family members, and honor the victims who were taken from us too soon. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.